Welcome, Raptor fans, to a very special impromptu live at 8:30 in the morning. Hopefully, some of our European fans get this. We got to talk about the Toronto Raptors. We have to talk about what's going on with this fan base. You know, I have been a party. I've been listening to a lot of Raptors content lately. Some of it has been very interesting to me. Basically, going into some of these Twitter spaces, just listening to people talk for 20, 30 minutes. It seems we have FPTSD. What is FPTSD? It is Fred post-traumatic stress disorder. Every talking point around this team right now, in my opinion, again, I'm not trying to dictate what you need to think, should be how well this team is playing together, how well they're implementing these new young pieces that have come over from New York, how great it was to see RJ Barrett in the midst of all this toxic asset stuff come together, and how great it was to see his teammates celebrating him. I thought it was great. I thought the way the team has played and competed, how much they're scoring, everything about this team feels great to me. But all I heard, well, not all I heard, but a lot of what I heard last night was, how come Darko didn't give RJ Barrett the chain? He's got a conspiracy against RJ Barrett. How come Scotty Barnes only had 6 points? He's getting frozen out of the offense. The Raptors are doing Pascal Siakam dirty. Why can't we have nice things? I have an answer for you. There are a few things that I know more about than basketball, but one of those things is trauma. And I understand that when you endure something that you consider arduous or difficult, that there is a residual effect that leaves. And I believe that being a fan of this team for the last 2 to 3 years has been really tough. Let's not even talk about the fact that we were the one fan base whose team couldn't come home. We were the one fan base whose team had to play on the road for an entire year. Then we had no fans at the arena. Masai Ujiri talks a lot about how the pandemic set the Raptors back. I think it set our whole fans back. I think it set our fan base back too. I've wondered for a while where it comes from. Does it come from the players? Does it come from the media? Does it come from the content creators? Does it come from the fans? Is there something inherently just wrong with us as a fan base? You know, last night Nikola Jokic had 4 points against the Detroit Pistons. Not one fan on the Nuggets forums was saying that he was being frozen out or that Mike Malone needs to get him the ball more, or nobody cared. Dave Kaufman said, I hope you're responding to a small minority. I'm not. This seems to be a very loud segment of the fan base, unfortunately. And I think it comes from consider all of our Dennis is going to start over Emmanuel Quickley. Do you remember when Emmanuel Quickley was traded? Now, I told you guys he's a huge part of why the Raptors made this deal. There's no way that long-term Dennis is going to start over him. But everyone said, but Darko loves Dennis. Who are you really talking about here? Darko may like Dennis a lot. And Dennis may be, and probably for good reason, Dennis has been, one of your 5-6 best players this year. It's not a conspiracy that one of your 5-6 best players is getting one of the 5 to 6 most minutes on the team. That kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Clearly, I've had issues with Darko's lineups, but this notion that he has such a love and affection for this player, which he has never addressed publicly, that he would start him over Emmanuel Quickley, the young, talented player. What are you really responding to? Fred VanVleet. Fred VanVleet and Nick Nurse. That's the real complex order of PTSD. I'd love to tell you that when someone comes back from war, that they leave the war there. They usually leave the trauma treatment there. So if they were dealing, I don't know, there's a lot of studies to suggest that if someone was in a war and they had used drugs to cope with that environment, that when they left that environment, very likely what often happens is they are no longer users or abusers. But it doesn't mean that someone who has been around this extreme um, fear doesn't immediately react when a car backfires. This is why people don't recover, because they constantly keep responding to shadows of things that they already went through. I think we as a fan base can move on. For pretty much years now, we have been divided into camps: Fred supporters, Scotty supporters, OG backers, Siakam backers, Masai haters, Masai supporters, MLSC, like MLSC haters. Like, there's just all this derision and division in this fan base. And I understand that as somebody who has been very much accused of being the pro Scotty camp for the last 2 years and Scotty over everything and stuff, that this might sound to some people disingenuous. It might sound like the pot calling the kettle black. Like, who the hell am I to say anything about this? I guess what I'm trying to say is this is what terrible teams do to fans that care about said terrible teams. And I'm not trying to say the Raptors were necessarily a terrible team the last couple of years. But really, and I understand that, this guy needs to get traded and that guy needs to get traded as a part of fandom. Every team has their whipping boy at the end of the bench. This guy probably a bad pick. We should probably waive him. What are the Nuggets organization see in him? What do the Lakers? Why do the Lakers have this guy on the roster? He was a bust. He can't play. He can't shoot. Why didn't he get into the gym? There's always some element of that. But I don't think I've ever seen it this pronounced other than one time. And that one time was the Knicks in the late 2000s under Isaiah Thomas. That's when I really felt what I'm feeling now as a Raptor fan, which is just a constant invention of paranoid rumors that make no sense, that have no semblance in reality. I think it's a great thing, like that Jama Malalela would go from being a Raptors assistant to a Warriors assistant for 2 years, elite assistant for those guys. Many people assumed, by the way, that Jama would replace Steve Kerr when Steve Kerr inevitably moved up to the head office. That's how well thought of he was in the Warriors lexicon and Warriors organization. They called it the Jama effect. This guy goes to the place where he spent the last 2 years, out coaches and creates a game plan that Darko believes gave them the game, influences their culture. And by the way, he's been doing a lot of other great stuff too. I mean, he's been working with the young players, he's been helping them behind the scenes. And Darko's just like, hey, man, today the chain goes to Jama. And people can't stand it. They can't stand it. They're just like, how could RJ not get that? It's a conspiracy. Well, if you've been embroiled in a media space that has just been creating conspiracy upon conspiracy and fan bases that are just, you're in a fan base that just talks conspiracy. It's a conspiracy against Scotty. It's a conspiracy against Siakam. When Siakam came out early in the year and his usage was low, everyone on that side just started going like, oh my God, it's a conspiracy against Siakam. They're trying to knock down his value. It wasn't slow start. It wasn't, trying to adapt to a new role. It wasn't trying to see something. No, it was immediate. This is not what I expect. Must be a conspiracy. So now, since the trade, Scotty's usage has gone down a little bit. And so people are like, it's not what I like. It's a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy. Someone messaged me on Twitter saying, if Siakam is not traded, you can expect many more nights like this from Scotty, 6 points. And I said, you know what? I think Scotty would welcome wins, whether he scores 0 or 30. He doesn't care because he's a team first player. I hated that the Raptors were, using Scotty in these very ineffective ways last year and then not finding him in the post when they put him in the post, burning him out, guarding centers, freezing him out of the offense. But that's what was happening last year. That's not what's happening this year at all. He got shots. He missed shots. That happens. Every player has a game like last night. Why must there be some sort of massive conspiracy? Oh, Darko just doesn't like Scotty. He's just taking the ball away from Scotty and giving it to Manuel quickly. Oh, man. Please don't do this. Don't do this. Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett have not been here long enough, really, to be influenced to this. But it must feel so weird, inside the locker room, the joy they must have felt to win this game as a team that has really not done well, and a team that's just coming together right now. To feel that joy for your brother to score 36, and then for RJ Barrett to be, you know, at at on Twitter, or at on, why are you taking the ball away from Scotty? Yo, these guys are human. This stuff is weird. It really needs to stop. I'm begging you. It's one thing when it happened with Fred. Maybe it went too far even with Fred. But with Fred, it felt like, maybe I'm wrong, but it felt like this was a guy who really was out for his, that he wasn't really supporting his teammates. Do I know that for sure? I can't say. But it felt like that was true. And it felt like how they moved on from him in the interviews in the following, months that came out, that it felt like there was a division here and that it was just time for both parties to move on. But Fred's in Houston now, and Nick Nurse is in Philly. And yet you can't listen to any Raptors show without hearing some talk about how Nick Nurse is a better coach than Darko Rajakovic, or how Fred's better than Schroeder. And it's just like this constant cross comparison between the past era and this era. And it just has to be. So I'm going to make an effort to be a better content creator, in the sense that I'm just genuinely happy as a Raptor fan right now. The team that I root for is playing team basketball. Players that I watched sulk at the end of the bench when they weren't getting touches, hijack the offense when they felt like, oh, I only had 4 shots in the first quarter and I sat on the bench in the second quarter, so now I got to come out and get 8 shots in the third quarter. This type of basketball is nauseating and depressing to watch, but that's not what I'm seeing. What I'm seeing is, Gary, if it's your night, go off. Dennis, if it's your night, go off. Scotty, if it's your night, go off. That's great. Masai Ujiri said there will be no selfishness. And I think for the most part, this team has been way less selfish than last year's. But Darko said something early. He said it will not go away overnight. And I think that's true. I think that's the hardest thing, because right now the battle that he's fighting is not a battle he even created. It's a battle that was created before he got here. And that is an uphill battle with not only this team, with this media space, but also with this fan base, of how can we get away from my favorite player scored 6, my favorite player scored 4, my favorite player only got four shots tonight, and I'm okay with it because the team played well. How can we get away from living and dying every single day, that every single time Scotty, plays well and we win, it's like everything's great? And there are people who are actually like, I'm going to ask you a question. If you're a super Siakam fan or a super Scotty fan or whatever fan you are, have you lost sight of the fact that your player playing well in a loss is not more important than your player playing poorly in a win? Have we lost sight of that? The moment that hit me, the moment where this hit me last year, where I felt like I was too deep into it, that I had just sort of lost the plot, that I was missing the forest from the trees, when I did that interview with Brian, Scotty's trainer. And he said, look, at the end of the day, we're all rooting for the Raptors. We want the Raptors to do well. And it just got me thinking that this dude who has trained this player, who has been not very well used in the offense, and he knew that, and he knew that for sure, and who wasn't having a great season, that even he could see, because he's not dysfunctional. He's not a member of this fan base. He's not enduring what we've endured. Even he could see from the outside that at the end of the day, it's team. If you're a part of, those Facebook groups on, on Facebook, the Raptors group on Facebook, you'll often see Scotty's mom, and she's just celebrating every win. It's kind of like Kyle Lowry's mom, to be honest. And she doesn't celebrate the games only when Scotty does well. She doesn't just go hush when she would like posts. Last year was in those groups. She would like posts of like Fred VanVleet had a big game. She would like that. She likes Pascal Siakam, like stuff. This is what I'm talking about. If you think about it, if you're a realist, you know that this team is being built around Scotty Barnes. I hope that you can acknowledge that we can all acknowledge that. Think about the player you're building around. This is an unselfish player. This is always going to be a player who's going to let other guys go and get theirs. At the end of the season, it'll all balance out. I promise. It'll balance out. If the team is successful, there's no way that a player this talented is not going to have the numbers. But one of the things that I always appreciated about Scotty was whether it was in Montverde or whether it was in the Knight Riders or whether it was the Sharks or whether it was Florida State University where he volunteered to come off the bench and he volunteered to go to Florida State where he got less minutes, therefore hurting his numbers, is that Scotty Barnes is the furthest thing from Rudy Gay that you can imagine. He does not care about stats. He does not care about, I got to get my 20 no matter what. It's never going to be like that. So if his teammate's going, he's going to cheer it. And that's a beautiful thing. You know why it's a beautiful thing? Because that's how you win championships. And ultimately, isn't that what this is about? No one player ever won a championship, regardless of how we think about things. The next thing I'll say, and the final thing I'll say, this is not going to be a super long live, is we live in an era of ESPN, Netflix, Pornhub, TikTok, Instagram, basically everything at your fingertips, everything now, everything, we're talking Amazon Prime. Everything is just now. It has to be now. If it's not happening now, I'm done. I'm over it. I have no patience for it. Thankfully, you have a front office in Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster who don't exist in that world. They don't do that. They don't live and die for every day. They're not trading a guy because he had a bad game. They're not trading for a guy because he had a good week. There's a longer term vision here. So I'll turn it back to something that Jonathan Convoy, one of our frequent callers, said. Think about the butterfly. Think about the caterpillar. This is a long process. I mentioned it during last night's live. I'll mention it now too. This is a very long process. It's not going to be super long. I'm not saying it's going to be 6 years or 7 years or something, but you're going to have to wait a little bit. You're going to have to wait a little bit on Grady Dick. You don't think that some of the stuff that Grady Dick is going through right now is based on how they covered Scotty last year? There's a lot of people who are using the same talking points of Scotty doing commercials in a bad year, and they're extending it to Grady. They're saying, why is he doing, these shaving commercials? He should be in the gym working. When have I ever seen a fan base do this to a 20-year-old kid? It's humiliating. I can't believe we're doing this. What are we doing here? What I'm trying to say is, I understand that we all have our favorite players, but I'm assuming that this is because that favorite player plays on your favorite team, and that at no point should you lose the plot. And the plot is that if your team is doing well and they're playing the right way, then let it be. Enjoy. Be happy. I say this to our community. I hope that other content creators can say this to their community. Derision and division and hate and, excitement and hot takes and all this stuff, I don't think we need to be there. That doesn't have to be your fandom. It could be the type of fandom you want to exist with. You want to live and die on every single day where a guy scores 20 and he's amazing, and the next day he scores 4 and he's a bum, and you want to live on that emotional roller coaster. By all means. By all means. It's very topical. It exists. I understand it. I don't know who to blame. Stephen A. Smith? Maybe. ESPN, Disney, whoever created this. But there's also this other complete flip of my team can do no wrong. Every player that plays for my team is perfect. It doesn't have to be so imbalanced. It doesn't have to be, okay, pick one extreme or another. It doesn't have to be that way. We can just enjoy the process. We can learn about the game. We can enjoy the game. We can enjoy the misses and the makes. We can enjoy the structure and the process of how a team is built. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. If anything, the Detroit Pistons, Sacramento Kings, teams that have gone through prolonged periods of losing have given me a renewed perspective on, not taking this for granted. You have a genuine budding superstar at the age of 22. Don't take it for granted. You also have a hell of a player in Pascal Siakam, who is an all-NBA guy, who is a 27th overall pick, who developed into that amazing player. Don't take that for granted either. You have a front office that's very competent and a head coach who's trying his damn best. Don't take that for granted either. Plenty of head coaches out there that don't know really what they're doing. I hope we as a fan base can just unite a little bit. We don't always have to agree. We don't. And I get that we probably never will. Maybe your favorite player is going to be RJ and someone else's favorite player is going to be Scotty, and then one day Scotty's going to take a shot and you're going to think RJ should have taken the shot because he was your favorite player. And hopefully at that point we can have a discussion about what was the best shot. But not to the extent of, RJ hates Scotty and Scotty hates RJ. And if you don't stop it, it will never stop itself. I promise you. Because I think that what we existed in and the space that we existed in, Fred, Pascal, Scotty, Nurse, Gary, all this stuff, it just created a different perspective on how to be a fan. And I think we need to scale it back because those people are gone. A lot of those people are gone. Some may leave soon. But you have a young team that is really trying to embrace playing as a team. And you have a young superstar who is the epitome of team basketball. And I just want to keep it at that. I hope that, and you know what? It doesn't even come from the Raptors. To be honest, a lot of this comes from Leaf fandom. It comes from the trauma of being a Leafs fan and rooting for a team that's so disappointing consistently. And I think it's just bled over into the media space. And I think the media, because of the way fans receive information from the media. I mean, you think about it last year, like what were we constantly responding to? Media coverage, rumors, leaks. I'm not trying to throw the media under the bus. They need to be better. We need to be better. Team needs to be better. But let's start. My grandmother used to say, don't worry about other people. Be the change you want to see. Okay. So we started our last night's live super positive. Doesn't matter. Scotty had 6 points. Doesn't matter that Siakam's shooting 20-something% from three. As long as the team is playing well and the process is good, let's celebrate it. It's not to be taken for granted. Trust me, there are plenty of fan bases that have been rooting for a play-in for since the play-in was came into existence. They've been like, oh my God, can we just get into the play-in? There are certain fan bases that have front offices that haven't hit on a single draft pick in like 8 years. Those exist too. So I think we've been one of the more winning fan bases, like the winningest team, one of the two winningest teams over the last 10 years. It's easy to take that for granted, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to build all that up. It took a lot of smart roster construction. And, when we drafted Norman Powell, when we signed an undrafted free agent Fred VanVleet, or we drafted Pascal Siakam 27th overall, or I don't think any of those moves were overly notable or popular, but they ended up being really great moves. And so I'm not saying blindly trust Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster that they'll always know what they're doing. They've clearly made a lot of mistakes over the last few years. Everyone does. What I am saying, however, is that what I saw last night and what I've seen since New Year's is a team that is playing together, but a fan base that remains completely split. So let's try to be better. That's what I can say. That's all I got to say. I gotta get a little bit of sleep, and then I gotta get to work on pen dance. To those of you who've been significantly contributing to the growth of this channel, to the growth of these videos, to the growth of these views, to subscriber growth, thank you so much. I'm very happy. It's a great way to start out the year. We're off to a phenomenal start. I think the Raptors are off to a phenomenal start. I can't wait for the Lakers game. Can't wait for the Clippers game. Be a great test. Continue to test our road skills. We have not been road warriors this year. I think it's going to be really fun seeing Scotty against LeBron and AD, seeing Pascal Siakam against AD. Like, this will be a really interesting matchup. And I think, so much of, how your season breaks is who you play when. I don't think the Lakers are playing overly well right now. I think it might be a good thing to catch them now. As opposed to having caught them, 3-4 weeks ago, and probably maybe 3-4 weeks from now. So, Vegan Grass saying, I hope Scotty scores a lot against the Lakers. Totally. I hope everyone scores, and it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, as I say very often, and I think I've just gotten into a habit of saying it every single live, just so that it gets more and more out there. Basketball is a game where 5 people work so that one person can score. That's always what it is. And if that person who scores tonight is Chris Boucher having 17 points off the bench on perfect shooting, then that's good. And if that's Gary Trent Jr. going off for 30, that's good. You know, what I think you lose when you have players who have to get their 22 shots, even though it's going out of the offense and you're disrupting someone else's rhythm, is I think you lose that sense of trust within your team. But if I wake up today and I'm a Raptor player, let's say I'm on the end of the rotation guy, like a Javon Freeman Liberty or, someone of that ilk, someone who doesn't play a lot, even a Jonte Porter, I might look at this and say, hey, I know RJ Barrett is not our franchise player, but he had it going. He got a rhythm and they didn't shut it off. They didn't stop going away from him because this ball dominant point guard needs to get his touches. They kept going back to him because it was working and the Warriors didn't stop it. And that's beautiful. And now if I'm Jonte Porter, now I have a greater trust in the team that I play for. I have a greater trust that when I get it going, they're not going to go away from me. I have a coach who is communicating with me fairly and is going to leave me out there if I'm playing well. There's no dictated okay, you played well and then you're not going to play for 2 weeks. No, if you play well, you played well the last game. Guess what? You got a rotation spot again back today. Nobody's perfect. Darko hasn't been perfect. No player on this team has been perfect. Scotty has not been perfect. Siakam has not been perfect. None of these guys have been perfect. What I'm just saying is, for once they're playing like a team, I'm just a very happy Raptor fan this morning. I wanted to share a little bit of that happiness with you, even though it is very sleepy happiness. Anyways, take care and good luck with your FPTSD. I promise you, if you get over it, being a fan of this team is going to be a hell of a lot better. I suspect that some really great things are coming up ahead, not only at the trade deadline, hopefully, but also with the season ahead. I was on Raptors Twitter Spaces last night with Zazu and the Cookout, and we were just talking about the schedule ahead and the cap sheet, and I'm just like, first time in a very long time, like maybe 3 years, I feel super optimistic about the road ahead. And I feel calm that this team will be good this year. And whether they make the play-in or whether they make the playoffs or whatever, that they're going to do it in a way that's interesting and good to watch. And that's all I cared about. I don't care if you win a championship. Not going to win a championship this year, most likely. I just care about the process. And yeah, I care about unselfish basketball a lot. And what I saw last night was very unselfish basketball. So take care. Have a great night or great day. Wow, I'm disoriented as hell. At some point, we will definitely do another community chess tournament thing where people can call in and play chess. One person was upset about it, but most people seem to like it. So we'll definitely do that. Jacob Isaac saying, I just want to win again, man. Yeah. Misery loves company. Yeah, that's very wise. And before we leave, of course, 2 little plugs. Number 1, vote Scotty Barnes. Yes, vote Scotty. Vote Emmanuel Quickly. Vote RJ Barrett. Vote Pascal Siakam. Vote your Raptors to the All-Star game. Vote.nba.com. Do not vote for other front court players that Scotty has to compete against. Don't vote for other backcourt players that Emmanuel Quickly has to compete against. There's been a resurgence of Raptors interest among this fan base, but also among other fan bases. I think teams are watching us pretty closely after this trade, maybe for fantasy purposes, maybe for just morbid curiosity. But I think this is a chance for the Raptors to really turn around their season. And hopefully it's a chance for a lot of people who've been tuned out for a couple of years to tune back in. And maybe those people need to hear it too. Vote.nba.com. We'll close out with a message from our sponsor, and we're outie. Subscribe if you are not subscribed. Cheers. Word from our sponsor. The Pendants Film Festival is happening February 22nd to 25th. It is a celebration of international films. It is a brilliant film festival in its 7th season, Prior to the COVID pandemic, it was the fastest growing film festival in the world. What is my affiliation with Pendance? What are they paying me to say this? Well, I am Pendance. I'm the festival director and founder of Pendance. It is my baby. And if you love great films, if you have a film lover in your life, this is a worthwhile event for you, happening in downtown Toronto at the Carlton Cinema, February 22nd to 25th. Make sure to check us out. Link is in the description below for tickets and passes. Tickets will go on sale soon. Passes are already on sale. Let's get to this.